Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Ian Andrews. I'm the Executive Director at Lakewood Alive. Thanks so much for being with us tonight for Knowing Your Home Plumbing 101. We're thrilled to have you joining us. We're going to turn to my colleague Allison here in just a moment, who's joined by our good friend John Turner. Before we do that, we want to thank our sponsors of the Knowing Your Home Workshop Series, First Federal Lakewood, Cleveland Lumber, Lakewood Public Library, and the City of Lakewood. We appreciate their support as we bring these really informative and educational workshops straight to you. And hopefully next year, we'll be able to see you in person. But in the meantime, we're making the best of it, and we're excited to come to you live from John's workshop. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, our Housing and Internal Operations Director, Allison Urbanik. Allison, go right ahead.
Oh, thanks so much, Ian, for such a kind introduction. Can you hear me okay? Great. So we are in John's amazing, super spectacular warehouse. We've done several workshops here today, or here during the series, which has been super awesome. So Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for all that you've done for us this year. And to Ian's point, we're really looking forward to being in person next year. Yes. So 2022, you hear it from these lips, it's going to be in person. I don't know how yet, but we're going to make it happen. And unfortunately, this is going to be the last workshop of this season. We have a few that are on the schedule, but I think we're going to have to push them till next year, but that's okay. Something to look forward to. So tonight, though, we are going to be talking about plumbing. Plumbing, I think, is probably next to roofing, probably the most important system.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, heat's important, but plumbing, because when it goes bad, it goes bad.
It goes bad. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if for those that remember the power outage in the mid 2000s, where the whole national grid went down. I could deal with a power outage. What I couldn't deal with was when the water shut off because the pumping stations went down. That was really miserable. So when the plumbing goes wrong in your house and you have to shut the water off, that's a bad day. And you really don't realize how much you rely on that water, not just for drinking. I mean, that's easy, but for cleaning and sanitary and just general hygiene, when you can't, you notice it pretty quickly.
Right, it adds up fast.
Yeah.
So tonight we're going to talk about how our system works, how we get water, what happens to the wastewater and where it goes. But then we're also going to talk about the system itself. And so if you're in an emergency, how you can kind of reduce impact. So I had a friend call me this week. The pipes burst on the 3rd floor of his house, and he's trying to call the city to get the water main turned off at the street. They didn't answer. And so, they're busy. They got a lot going on. So he called me, and I was like, well, of course, you shut it off at the water main. Well, where's that?
Yeah, exactly.
So to me, that's kind of that's where I would have gone first. So I'm hoping that after tonight, all of you will also run to your water main first when you have an emergency. But we're going to try to tell you as much as we can to deal with emergency situations, mm-hmm. and then what's behind the walls in your system, and then how we can improve upon our systems, because they're aging, right?
Exactly.
Our homes are 100 plus years old. Our pipes are more than likely that old. So we'll talk about improving. So I'm going to now turn it over to John. I'm going to ask questions along the way, and we hope you do too.
Yes, please.
So at the bottom, you see a Q&A little button. If you click on that, you can submit your questions. We miss all of you. We wish we were in front of you. We wish we were at Beer Engine or other cool places hosting this workshop. So we need you to help us make it as interactive as possible. So please submit comments, questions, and then Ian will read those off to us as we go throughout the presentation. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. So just a quick note up front about all of this. This is, we're calling this Plumbing 101. So this is really more theory, understanding how the supply water comes into your home, how it gets dealt with, and how it then leaves your home as wastewater. Not going to get into how to replace a valve or toilet flush flapper, things like that. I would consider that a 200 series course.
Yes.
So we're just going to stick to the real basics, help you to be able to troubleshoot where your problem might be if problems develop, and how to have a conversation with either a sewer cleaning contractor and or a plumber to sort that out. Because the more you know, whether you do the work yourself, which a lot of it can be done by yourself, it's not that hard, or you decide to bring a contractor in, the more informed you are, the better educated you are, the better the conversation you're going to have with that contractor and get the appropriate repair put into place.
And
So-
if we could talk about that for just 1 second.
Mhm.
So plumbers, they charge you by the hour.
Yes.
And you have to pay a fee to have them come out.
Yeah, there's usually a an initial fee, a show up fee, and it can range all over the place. But plumbers these days, good ones, are hovering around $100 an hour.
Yeah, we're
plus or
seeing
minus.
$75 to $90 an hour.
Yeah. And for sewer cleaning, if they're going to come out to, let's say you've got a backup in your waistline and you have to have that cleaned or cameraed, that's usually about a $500 bill to show up with the camera and the sewer cleaner to get that done. So just understand that it's a little bit of a steep entry price, but we'll talk more about that a little bit later. So your plumbing system, and it all gets thrown into the basket of plumbing, but there's basically two main lanes for plumbing, and it's like a country road. It's two lanes, one going one direction and one going the other direction. We're going to start with the supply side, water coming into the house. All right. So we all heard, know what happens when a water main breaks. It starts to bubble up through the street, so forth. And as you can well imagine, you've got a big network of pipes underground that then distribute water all over the city. And the same system that supplies the fire hydrants is also supplying your house. It's not two separate things. A lot of people, I think it's two separate things, and it's not. And the proof of that is when they come to flush the hydrants every now and then, and they do that, and all of a sudden you've got basically weak tea coming out of your taps for a bit, and into your toilet, and so forth. And that's from the hydrant flushing, and they're stirring up a bunch of sediment, which is what they're trying to do, and get that sediment out of the system. Most of it goes out of the hydrant. Some of it comes out of your taps. All right. Now, water is delivered to your house, and it has basically two components to it: pressure and flow. Pressure is the push, how hard the water is pushing against the fixture, whether you're holding a garden hose or whether you're flushing a toilet or filling your bathtub. The pressure is the push. And in residential plumbing, that pressure hovers around 50 to 70 PSI, which is pounds per square inch. You don't need to really understand what that means, except that that's what it should be. If you start to get drop-offs in that pressure where it gets down to 40, 30 PSI, you're going to start to see the flow coming out of your taps drop off, or you're in the shower and somebody flushes the toilet and all of a sudden you're scalded. That's when you start to have to look at the pressure, and pressure is also backed up by the amount of water or the flow of water, which is why, even though it's all, let's say it's 60 PSI, you can hang onto your garden hose all day long and be fine. That's 60 PSI. When they open up the fire hydrant to flush it, or worst case scenario, up to a pumper truck, that's also 60 PSI, but you're not hanging onto that hose. It takes 3 large people to hang onto that hose. So 60 PSI, what's the difference? The difference is the amount of water, the gallons per minute. So it's probably, 500 gallons a minute coming out of the hydrant. It's only probably about 3 gallons a minute coming out of your garden hose. So that's the main difference, but it's the same water coming from the same place, which is basically a water pumping station, treated as it comes out, in our case, comes out of the lake, treated, chlorinated, filtered. I think they even use UV light to irradiate it, so forth. So, and also I think in Cleveland, we're still putting fluoride in our waters.
Yes, and Lakewood supply comes from the city of Cleveland, and then we treat our own water before it goes back into the lake.
There you go. So, so that's how it's coming to your house. Every individual address has at least one main valve coming from the tap at the street main that then comes into your house. And this is going from just slightly, either under your sidewalk or under the street, and a pipe probably about 3 to 6 feet below grade is then coming into your house. Traditionally, that pipe was either steel, cast iron, and then they went to galvanized, and then they went to copper. And we're going to talk about the whys and the wherefores of those materials a little bit later. But it comes into your house typically as a 3/4 inch diameter pipe, which is something like this, all right? And you will find this coming up through your floor or coming down low through your wall, and there should then be a water meter.
So Ian, could you please pull up slide number 11? And the water line is right below the freezing part of what's the freeze line? Is that right? Frost line.
Frost line, right. And this is basically the depth, there you go. And that's a typical installation of a water meter. So that main line is coming through the concrete slab in the basement, coming up to the meter. And then at that, just before that meter, you'll see a valve, and that is your internal house main shutoff. Okay. One of the things I would suggest you all do after this program, and do it soon, is to map out your plumbing in your house. Identify all of the valves, shutoffs, and so forth, and I'll get into where you'll find those in a minute here. But knowing where those valves are and making sure that they operate can be the difference between being inconvenienced and an outright disaster with your plumbing.
And if we could talk for just a moment about the actual valve that's on this particular water meter.
Okay.
So we have, and you're going to be able to tell me the names of the valves. So we have one right here.
Yep.
And so I think what John's hitting at, which is so important, is that you have to make sure that your water main actually shuts off your house.
Right.
Because if you turn that valve and it hasn't been turned,
that valve.
And or if it hasn't been turned and the nut and packing is loose and it won't actually close the valve, you're in a bit of a problem.
Yeah, exactly. So you can come back to me, Ian. So the valve that you saw on that slide right before that meter is what we call a gate valve or a globe valve. And it's the old school valve that has the round handle, so forth, right?
We're trying out new technology here today,
right.
people.
Right. And I could come around too. Maybe I should come around.
Okay.
And then just grab stuff off of the table.
Okay, sorry guys, hold on.
That's right. So again, it's what we all know and love in our basement. They're hanging upside down and so forth. But it will be a slightly larger one right by that meter, as you saw on that other slide. Right? And basically, it takes multiple turns to make them close. All right. Now, these things are probably as old as your house. And there's really not a lot of maintenance to them. But what you really should do, and again, I think this should be part of your homework assignment when you're going around and mapping it all, is to make sure that they all work. Now, there's a bit of caution that goes with this. If you start to turn that valve and you're getting a lot of resistance and you really need to, wear a pair of gloves or take a wrench to it, I would stop. Just stop. Get online, or I don't know if you have resources at Lakewood Alive on how to work on the valves at all.
Yeah, we could definitely walk you through that process, myself or Matt, Toolbox Matt Clark. We can do that, no problem. If it's something that's out of your comfort zone, we can help you find a plumber who can do that for you.
But making sure that these can operate, they need to, asking them to close 100%, that'd be great. But if you can get them to close 95%, really just shut down the flow and so that you can sort out the problem that's downstream, that would be acceptable. And it's not hard to do.
And then you could switch to this kind.
Correct.
And I'm blanking on the name.
This is called a ball valve. And this is what basically we're using now in place of the globe or the gate valve. And instead of having to make multiple turns, it's a quarter turn. And the nice thing about these is when the handle is across the valve, it means the flow is stopped. When it's in line with the valve, the flow is allowed to pass through the valve.
And it's
right?
great for people of all walks of life, right?
Yes.
It's easy to turn.
It takes nothing.
And
There's no
a
maintenance.
child could do it. You could tell your child to do it, or a senior who maybe doesn't have the greatest hand dexterity anymore.
Exactly right.
Anybody can control these. So we really are encouraging people to switch to this type of valve throughout the house whenever they're having trouble or if they're upgrading, because it makes a world of difference.
World of difference. And these valves, basically either called a quarter turn or a ball valve. And that's either for what we call our zone valves, shut-off valves, so forth. And also the same thing applies for your local shutoffs, like behind your toilet or underneath your vanity, that you can then, shut things off. Now, this happens to be a multi-turn valve, kind of like the globe valve or gate valve, but they now make this also in a quarter turn variety, which is a lot easier, no maintenance, and so forth.
How many times have you been bent over trying to get to because your toilets are probably tucked in the corner, like mine, because the bathroom's very small, and you're like doing some sort of weirdo move to get to that valve.
You don't have the leverage.
No. So those new updated ones, life-changing. Exactly.
So anyway, so that's kind of the valve. So the water supply is coming into the basement through that meter. Now, old school, you had the meter reader that would come around, knock on your door. You have to let them into the basement or wherever the meter's located, and they would read the dials and so forth. Now we do remote readings. So at some point, maybe you were there when it happened, or maybe you moved into the place and it was already done. They put a remote reading system on that meter that then brings it to the signal, or to, count the gallons per hour to the outside of the house, so the meter reader doesn't have to come in. And now the next step, apparently, is they're doing it with drones. So they're just basically flying a drone down the street.
Well,
and it's
hopefully
picking up
Lakewood will keep our friendly meter readers that we see walking. They wear these nice yellow vests and they, walk around.
Right.
But the great thing about these new water meters, John, is that they're monitored. If you have a leak, like your toilet's leaking, or maybe a pipe explodes and you're on vacation, generally they'll catch it. Now they're not looking at John's house every day to see what your water usage is. Yeah. But they are checking, like they set if it's like a 3-day thing, which if your house is flooding, that's a problem.
Right.
But if your toilet is running, a 3-day catch is not terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And they will send you a letter. We could probably talk about how we could speed these things up, but that's, at least they send you a letter, or they might give you a phone call.
I got a phone call, actually.
So phone calls, if they don't have your phone number, they probably will send a letter.
Mm-hmm.
But they do a great job of alerting people when there's a problem. We get a lot of calls at Lakewood Alive from seniors whose toilet's been leaking. I know, I'm like the voice on the side that nobody, But anyway, so we get a lot of calls from seniors who get the letter in the mail. They have a toilet in the basement that's been running and they never go down there and use it. So I'm really excited that Lakewood upgraded to the Neptune system, because it is digital, and they can keep an eye on things. So the water department's super helpful, and you can always call them if you're not sure, and they'll give you tips and tricks. So you can call us if your water bill has increased, significantly month to month, and you need some help troubleshooting. We can help with that.
And you will get, seasonal spikes. In the warmer months, you're probably watering a garden and or a lawn. That chews up a lot of water. And
they do have the summer sprinkling program. So for your sewer, because you're putting the water onto your garden, they'll reduce your sewer fees. And in Lakewood, we get monthly, monthly bills for water and sewer. It's combined. In other communities, they get a sewer bill like once every 3 months.
Right.
But we get a bill every month, which is nice, because then in the summer, a bigger bill is coming and it's not lumped together. But you can sign up for summer sprinkling. You sign up for it once, and then they'll continue to give you that discount every summer on the sewer portion, at least.
Right.
And if you are a senior or know a senior who lives in Lakewood, you can also get homestead exemption. So if you're 65 or older, they will reduce your water bill to help you save a little bit of money, because generally the seniors are on a fixed income.
4 more years.
Counting down. Counting down.
So anyways, back to the inbound. Once the water passes through your meter, It then gets distributed through your house. And Ian, I think we've got a slide number 5.
No,
Four?
either one number 2. Let's start with slide number 2.
Okay.
Or is it the one the cold? Either 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, man.
That's 2.
That's 2. Okay, well, that's kind of giving you an overview of in and out. Let's go down 2 panels. There. Perfect. So in the upper left-hand corner, you have a blue line that's coming in from the left. That's coming from your meter, all right? The first branch, or the first T in that system, splits off the water and takes it to the hot water heater. Thereafter, you have 2 branches that are being distributed through your house, the hot and the cold. Now, one thing I would suggest as part of that homework project is that you go and identify and trace out the hot and the cold. And you can be as simple as little tags, or if you go to the hardware store, you can get red electrical tape and blue electrical tape. And then just, every, wherever, 5, 8 feet, put a little loop of tape around that line to identify it as either hot or cold. Believe me, you're trying to shut valves off when something's gone wrong. Just that knowledge of where stuff is running is a good thing. And as you're going along, you're also going to start to discover, if you already haven't done so, other valves, smaller ones than the one that you have at your meter. But they are what we call zone valves. And this allows you to isolate the water from certain branches in the house so that you don't have to down the entire house.
Which is so important, right? So
Yes.
my friend who had the pipe explode on the 3rd floor, that water was shut off through the entire house. It's actually a triple unit house. And so no one had water.
Exactly.
And so I said, you might be able to find the pipe that goes up to the 3rd floor, but at that point it was pretty much chaos.
Right.
So if they would have done that pre-planning, it's happened to me when pipes freeze and I'm like, oh God, please don't burst.
Exactly.
I was able to track it. Also, when I was tracking my pipes, helped me to identify where my tricky areas are, where the cold air gets in.
Exactly.
And we're going to talk about rerouting our water lines if we're going to upgrade them. And the people who lived in my house before me were not so nice people, and they put our supply lines on the exterior walls.
I'm shaking my head if you can't see.
Yeah, I'm angry just talking about it. And I have CPVC piping, so it's plastic. And which, thank you so much for upgrading my plumbing system. But it froze. And oh, by the way, they cut the gas line to the fireplace that's right by the fire or the chimney that was blowing onto my pipes and caused my pipes to freeze, not in the polar vortex, but in the winter after that one. So it caught me off guard.
Exactly.
And if you know me at all at Lakewood Alive, you know that the second it gets cold, I'm posting online. Tonight is the night for you to look for those drafty areas. And all of my friends get courtesy texts that it's cold. So if you want to get on that courtesy text, send me a little message and I'll add you. But the point is it's helpful when you figure out where your pipes are going, because then you can identify where the closing valves are, but also if you have trouble spots.
Exactly. And again, if you have the old style multi-turn valve, the globe valve, gate valve, and so forth, is to check to make sure that there's operational. And is in each valve, what I've done in my homes over the years and done for customers in the past is to get little manila tags from Staples, Office Max, whatever, and label what they service. Oh, that's the kitchen sink. Oh, that's the dishwasher. Oh, that's the 2nd floor bath, so forth. And again, just something that you can, if you're not home and you got to direct somebody into the basement to shut off a water valve and so forth because something's gone wrong, it's a lot easier to deal with than, it's over there by this furnace.
Well,
Okay.
And I'm seeing a theme here. So when we did electrical, we were mapping our electrical panel.
Right.
Now we're mapping our plumbing system. And again, all of this pre-work is going to save a lot of time and tears when chaos is happening. You're going to be able to react a lot quicker than if you're scrambling to try to find something.
Exactly.
It'll already be labeled.
Exactly. Now, old school, they tend to run these 2 hot and cold lines very close to each other. So if you're trying to find the hot water line that's servicing your second floor bath, but you find the cold, you're tracing out the cold, well, you shouldn't have to look very far to find the hot water line. It should be pretty close. So they tend to run in pairs, kind of as a diagram indicates. And then once it gets to the fixture, right, then there should be another set of valves, kind of similar. Ian, if you want to come back to me. Similar to what I showed you before in this little guy, which is either going to be tucked behind your toilet, underneath the vanity for your sink, and so forth, as yet another shutoff valve. So you might have a shutoff valve in the basement that you've identified for the second floor bath. That valve will shut off the water to this vanity, the tub, and the toilet. These little guys will typically shut down each individual fixture. So let's say you need to change out the flush valve in your toilet. Well, there's no need to go to the basement and shut down the entire bath. You can shut down the toilet, do the work that needs to be done, re-energize the system, and voila, and there you go. All right.
And I don't know if this is a good time or not to mention though, but if we're shutting down valves, when we turn them back on, you're going to probably get that air that might be in the system. So the shaking.
Yes. Yes. So let me hold that one for just a second. Let's talk about materials and so forth with the and why you might have to break into your plumbing and put air inside of it. So traditionally we had steel pipe, and then we went to galvanized pipe, and there's still ferrous materials, ferrous, iron, steel. Steel likes to rust, and when you run a bunch of water through it over a period of time, that's exactly what's going to happen. I think we have a great.
Yeah, go to slide number 11, please.
Okay, upper left-hand corner. Oh.
I mean, yeah, 11 with the water meter.
We're just there.
Yep, thank you.
There you go. Upper left-hand corner are some examples of old ferrous pipes that have been taken out of homes, buildings, and so forth. And you can see the amount of corrosion that's taken place on the inside of those pipes. Now, some of that is also mineral accumulation as the water is going through the line. We'd love to pretend that what comes out of our water taps is 100% water. It's not true. There is stuff in it. Now, fortunately, it won't hurt you. In fact, it's probably good for you. But what will happen with iron pipe, as it starts to corrode, that corrosion kind of picks up almost like barnacles on a ship's hull. It starts to collect stuff. And believe it or not, those pipes aren't too bad. In my experience, I've broken open some pipes that literally I could not get a pencil tip through it. But this thing was still flowing water, badly, but it was still flowing. Now, that pipe is probably original to the house and is going from the street into your house. Now, eventually, that's going to be a problem, and that's going to be an expensive problem. So some of the utility companies, I think our gas company offers a cheap insurance program that allows you, for like $4 a month or something ridiculously cheap to insure that line, whether it's your gas line, your water line, or even your sewer line, so that when it does go wrong and it needs to be replaced, you then can fall back on that insurance instead of having to go out of pocket. So a typical water line replacement is going to start at around $1,500, and then depending on how convoluted it gets, it can be $3,000 to straighten that mess out. So those insurance programs at $4 a month is just basically a no-brainer in my book. And I do have that insurance for my properties. So now, as time goes on and problems develop or additions or renovations happen to a house, and you can come back to me, Ian. We stop using things like iron and we flip to copper. And that's probably the most prevalent thing that you'll find in your house today is copper. And it's non-corrosive. It's a little expensive, but it's very, very durable. And which is why it's still basically, I think, the standard for indoor plumbing. We've got some movement in some other materials, PEX being the next biggest one. But again, I think I'm old school. I still like my copper. But PEX is coming on strong, and it is a lot easier to deal with if you are a DIYer. All right. So we're going to swing the camera down here. We're going to look at some of these materials. I gave you a little bit of a preview. Now, I don't really have an example of the galvanized or cast iron pipe, but you saw the pictures before, and that'll have to do. This is an example of copper. It comes in various sizes. All right. Now, you're going to find a mix of sizes in your basement, or you should anyways. Although in my experience, I've seen some poorly installed plumbing where everything is this smaller half-inch size, which is usually the root of the problem. But most of the large branch circuits in your basement is going to be this 3/4 copper. And whether it's copper or whether it's PEX or whether it's CPVC, which what Allison was talking about earlier, right? It's all basically dimensioned at the same. It's 3/4 of an inch and or 1/2 inch. And there's some, every now and then you'll find some 3/8, but that's very, very rare. All right. So the copper comes in 2 flavors, either sweat, which means that there's no threads on the pipe or the fittings. Okay. And they slide together, and then you use solder and heat to join them together. All right. And that's traditional. There's a bit of a learning curve to this, but once you get it right, it's an awesome, awesome system. Quiet and quite reliable. Right. You can also get copper or brass in threaded as well. I think I had, yeah, here's a copper that's threaded. And this allows you to transition to things like valves, right, that have a threaded end on them. So you can mix and match. We put copper together with solder and heat. We put threads together by putting tape and a little bit of schmoo around that tape, screwing them together with wrenches, so forth, and that's going to create a watertight joint. Right. Now, the other thing that's come along over the years is trying to do, because soldering has a bit of a learning curve, and if you get it wrong, it really can be quite annoying, is we now have repair fittings, and this happens to be one called a shark bite. And these are brilliant because they're just slip-on. You put them on the pipe, drive them over, they're self-sealing, so forth, and you buy the little tool, and don't make a liar out of me, they can come right off again. Okay, so if you got to do a quick repair, these little shark bites can really save a lot of time, and so forth. They're very expensive, but either learn how to solder if you got copper or get the shark bite. And the nice thing about the shark bite, or the nice thing I should say about our plumbing in this country, is the codes that go with it. They've made sure that whether you're dealing with PEX, copper, or CPVC, these shark bites will work on all of them. So you can mix and match.
Yeah,
And
they're great for repairs, especially for people who aren't super duper familiar with plumbing repairs.
Right.
It goes I mean, they're really easy to use.
Exactly. So now again, PEX is really coming on strong, and basically because it's very flexible, right? It's cheap.
And
compared to
Ian, if we
copper.
can pull up the picture, I don't know the name. It's got all of the loops, the red and blue loops of PEX, just so we can show what it looks like in practice.
Well, you'll find it. I don't see that one. You'll find it in your.
There it is.
In your. Oh, okay.
Well, nope, you were.
It always flips back to that one for some reason.
It likes it.
There you go.
Oh, one more back.
Excuse me.
Nope, sorry. One more forward. No, we just saw it. I'm sorry.
Well, that'll do. Yeah.
There's one more. This is a technical difficulty, folks. I'm sorry.
Panel 28, Ian.
Perfect.
28, there it
Yeah,
is.
thank you.
Okay.
So the PEX, you'll see it in practice. The red is the hot and the blue is the cold.
Right.
And then the manifold is basically the shutoff valves.
Yeah. And what you're almost doing is replicating the way your electric is run through your house. So that manifold is almost like your breaker box. And then you have lines running off to your fixtures in those PEX lines. The nice thing about the PEX, again, is it's cheap. It's easy to work with. It's also quieter than copper because all of your bends are very smooth. So you don't have to sit there and, you know, make all sorts of funny connections, elbows and T's and so forth, that every time you make a hard turn with water, it creates noise. So eventually that all adds up. And when you turn a valve on upstairs, somebody else in the basement knows about it.
Right. Okay. So thank you, Ian. I just wanted to show that in practice.
And PEX is also something that you as a DIY or a homeowner can easily use. Now you're going to have to invest in a crimper tool like this. And maybe you can rent them now from, you know, the big box stores and so forth. I'm not sure.
We don't have one at the Lakewood Toolbox, but we can get one if people are interested. Let us know.
Yep. So you have those fittings that have kind of almost a barb on them, but it's a little different than a barb fitting. And barb fittings don't work, by the way. So just know that. And then you put the little crimp collar on there. And again, when you're not trying to float this in the air, it works a lot better. And done. A lot easier than sweating pipe with solder and the flux and the dropped hot solder on your shoe and all that other happy stuff. So those are the basic plumbing materials.
If we could talk about lead pipe. And I can chime in about Lakewood's lead pipes.
I mean, how much of it's left?
So in Lakewood, there are still some service lines that are like connection lines from the street to the house that are lead. The city has a map. You can find it on the website, or you can call the water department. But I do want to say that Lakewood does water quality testing. I think it's at least every 6 months or once a year, but they do it based on what's recommended. And when I've talked to the water department and the public works director, and the city of Cleveland puts a chemical, kind of a sludge. I hate to describe it this way, but it's a coating that goes through our pipes, and it's constantly put into our water and coats our pipes. So whether you have galvanized or copper or PEX or whatever, this coating coats the pipes so that they don't corrode. So, and that's where we saw trouble in Flint and other communities, because they were not putting the chemical into the water once they changed their water supply. And so Lakewood does not have a lead water issue. Okay. So I just wanted to put that out there to let people know. If you do know that you have a lead service line, there are do's and don'ts. Don't get hot water out of the tap to drink. You know, heat your water. Oh,
as opposed to, okay, so don't take your tea out of the hot water tap.
Correct. Okay. You're going to want to heat your water because you don't want your pipe to get hot and then drink the water. You can use it to clean your dishes and wash your face and wash yourself. Okay. And then also in the morning, if your pipes have been sitting overnight, let your faucet run for a little bit. Get the water through so that's not the pipes that, you know, hasn't been sitting in your pipes. Right. And then you'll get a nice fresh load of water. And it's very effective, and it's a very, you know, if you're not able to switch out your service line, there are ways to be safe and ways around the challenges of lead pipes. Yeah. Happy to talk with people further. And again, our water department is super helpful, so you can also contact them. But we want to, you know, make sure you feel safe. So feel free to reach out if there are any questions.
Great. Super. So that's basically how water gets distributed through your house, right?
I have a question.
Yes.
Why? Age-old question. Why does bathroom water taste different than kitchen water?
Does it?
Well, I drink bathroom water like if it's late at night and I need a drink of water, but I feel like it's more refreshing. Come on, people out there. Let us know your
I'm
thoughts.
going to agree with Allison. Yes, same in my house.
Interesting. Why would that be?
It's the same. You know, my thinking is that it's farther away from the cold water.
But it's not, I mean, it's the cold, you're drinking out of the cold water tap, not the hot
Yeah,
water
I
tap.
don't, yeah, generally
I mean,
drink.
I understand coming out of the hot water heater, just because that stuff's been sitting and cooking, and cooking the chemicals, but why would it taste different? Say, like you get up in the middle of the night and get a glass of water from the bathroom versus the kitchen?
Yeah.
Huh. I've never noticed.
And I was in a hotel recently and the only water I had was bathroom water and it was not refreshing. I don't know.
I'm stumped.
If anyone else wants to chime
not
in,
heard
but
that.
bathroom water tastes different than kitchen water.
Okay. I'm going to have to look into that because I've never heard that before. And I've not noticed a difference myself. And I'm a connoisseur of water.
Well, go home. You're going to notice. Sorry if I ruined everyone's bathroom water.
Yeah, really. Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, maybe we'll figure that one out a little bit later. But what are some of the other problems that we run into with our supply side water? I think I mentioned it before. You know, you're in the shower and somebody either turns on the kitchen tap or flushes the toilet, so forth, and you get scalded. So again, I'm coming back to this whole thing of pressure and flow. Pressure is kind of constant coming into the house. It's going to be, again, it should be running 50 to 75 PSI. But every time you open a tap, that tap is allowing X amount of water, amount of flow to come out of it. If your pipe is too small to service that particular fixture, then the pressure is going to drop off and then the flow is going to get uneven. And this is, again, what happens before when I just mentioned, you know, you're in the shower, somebody opens a tap, flushes it, and so forth. If you've got old, you know, ferrous supply lines, either cast iron pipe and or galvanized pipe, you could have so much of that corrosion built up that it's starting to impede the flow. All right, so you have the pressure static when nothing's being used, but as soon as you start to demand water, you can't flow enough water, the pressure drops off, so forth, and you get scalded. So you might want to look for those lines and replace those. And again, you can interrupt it with all sorts of different fittings and so forth, whether it's yourself or have a contractor come in and do it to eliminate those sketchy lines. The other thing I mentioned before too is the basic two sizes of the plumbing on your supply side for residential. And you get into commercial and industrial, and it's a whole nother animal. But 3/4 on the way into the house, 3/4 line, whether it's copper, PEX, PCVP, I'll never be able to say that correctly.
CPVC.
What she said. Should be 3/4 of an inch to a place where it breaks off to run more than one fixture. So let's say a bathroom. So you're going to run 3/4 all the way to that bathroom. And then you can split off 1/2 inch to run your tub, 1/2 inch to run your toilet, 1/2 inch to run your sink. All right. And they make all sorts of funny fittings to allow you to do that. I'm going to come around. This would be a typical branch T. All right. So your 3/4 coming in. And then you're going to go off to, let's say, the tub. And you can come down to 1/2 inch. But let's say you want to go then and service another bathroom up on the 3rd floor. You'll notice this one is 3/4 inch. That should be a 3/4 run up to
Wow.
that next room, bathroom, so forth. And this is where it often goes wrong, especially DIYers, because they don't understand that. 1/2 inch, of course, is cheaper than 3/4. I'm like, well, why do I need 3/4? You're going to find out. Okay. This is why you do that. And while we're on copper, because I'm not going to give up on copper, I won't. There's two types of copper, and you'll find both of them at either the plumbing store or the big boxes, hardware store, and so forth. And it's L copper, L as in Larry, or M copper, M as in Mary. And the L copper is blue. Will have blue markings on it. This is what you want. This is thicker wall, all right? So it's more durable. And if you're sweating pipe and you're an amateur, you will have a much better chance of getting that connection correct with the thicker copper than you will with the red copper, the thin copper, or the M copper.
Yeah.
Okay, M for red, right? L for blue. Makes perfect sense. So just understand that. Vote for the blue. Vote for the L.
Ian, do you have any questions?
No questions. However, Kathy Brown lends her support to what Allison and I were saying, that she tends to think bathroom water tastes and smells a bit, as she said, chlorine-y.
What was that word?
Chlorine-y, basically like chlorine-like. Chlorine-like.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for making me feel heard.
Sorry, John. I had to throw that in there.
No, I'm intrigued. I'm baffled, but intrigued. So I'll think on that. I'll make something up if I can't really find an answer.
We'll report back.
Exactly. So what other problems can we have? Well, it's just downright leaks. As Allison mentioned before, and if a contractor runs a supply line through an exterior wall up here in the north, he's a moron.
We call it Uncle Frank in my house. Uncle Frank caused all the problems. He is. Ugh.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's a no-no. Especially, if you get below 32 degrees on a regular basis, running lines externally in an exterior wall, you're just begging for it. You're just begging for it. It's so hard to keep the cold out of those lines. And especially, and even if you can, super insulate your walls, which sometimes makes the problem even worse, but we won't go into that. But all around the rim of your house, you'd like to think it's 100% airtight. And as Allison mentioned before, it's not.
Mm-mm.
So, and your house is basically a gigantic chimney in the wintertime. Cold air is coming in the bottom because the heat is rising through the house and going out the top in sundry ways. And that cold air coming in through the rim joists and so forth and finding those exterior pipes is what causes them to freeze and burst. Water freezes to the tune of 12,000 PSI. A fully frozen slug of water is 12,000 PSI. You just don't have valves and materials and plumbing in your house that are capable of withstanding that. It's going to give, especially if it gets trapped. And that's what happens. It gets trapped between two hard points, two valves. And when it expands, whatever the weakest link in that chain is, in that section, is what's going to burst and cause a problem once it thaws out.
So can we talk about that for a minute?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thawing. So this is our annual reminder. Winter is coming. I'm sorry. It's coming.
It happens every year, Bob.
Yeah. It's surprising. Just keeps coming back.
Consistent.
And so the key, though, if you have frozen pipes, is there is no fast solution.
Nope.
You cannot dump hot water on it. It's going to only make the problem worse.
Mm-hmm.
So they sell pipe wraps, which is slow.
Mm-hmm.
Hair dryer, slow. Fan, keep the air moving. So if you do have a frozen pipe, you got to go low and slow.
Correct.
And if you know you have a trouble area, you got to keep the air moving. Running a fan under your kitchen sink or wherever. In my terrible bathroom where the pipes are on the exterior, we had to cut an access panel. And now once it goes below 32 degrees, I put a soap container to crack the supply or the access panel so that warm air will flow through. I run my water before I go to bed and when I wake up in the morning. Like I am a lunatic at this point because of what I lived through.
You haven't had a burst pipe since, right?
No. And I thankfully didn't have any burst pipes that caught it.
Right.
And I got it to unthaw.
There you go.
But now that's why my loved ones all get text messages when it's going to be too cold, because I don't want anyone. So all of you, again, get on my list.
There you go. There you go. So here in the shop, I have that condition. I have a drop to my vanity in the bathroom that is on an exterior wall. And so when it gets, for me, it's probably closer to 25 degrees. Once it's 25 degrees or less, I got to keep my vanity doors open to let the warm air from the shop or the bathroom under there to keep that from freezing up. Right? Also, coming back to unthawing your pipes, pipe will freeze, it'll burst the line. As long as it's frozen, it's not a problem.
Right.
So when you do go to unthaw it, or if it's, it's going to unthaw, make sure that you have buckets or whatever you got a containment, because it's going to start to leak, and you want to be able to gather up that water before it, damages or destroys other property and so forth. And this is the perfect reason to have all of your plumbing mapped out and all of your zone valves in operation. And again, I mentioned before, older valves, if you can get them to shut off 95%, you're doing well. If you can shut off 95% of your water, let's say you burst a pipe someplace in the house, you can then open up, say, the slop sink spigot and let that extra 5% go there so that it drains down. And that gives you time to then have that burst pipe repair without damaging walls and so forth. So ice damage. And there's just plain old failures. Copper over the years, even though it's not very corrosive, can corrode. Pinholes are the most common type of failure for copper. And they are truly just little pinholes that erupt. And it's just basically what we call in metallurgy, it's an inclusion in the copper. It's a contamination in the copper, and water finally gets its way and creates this tiny little pinhole. Oftentimes you can't hear it and you can't see it. You might be able to feel it if it's out in the open, but normally it creates this pinhole in the most inconvenient spot in the house, which is inside of a wall someplace.
If I can tell you a story.
Yes.
And, Ian, if you could please bring up slide number 8. So in my house, again, I have CPVC, thanks Uncle Frank, and it's near my kitchen. So this is my wall. This is my dining room wall. It's going to go back to that picture, isn't it? Oh, there it is. So here's my dining room wall, and I have a bathroom on the other side of this.
Right.
And so there's my CPVC, and this is a true story, and it makes me angry even just talking about it. So
this class is making you angry.
It is, because water is terrible. So to the right side of the picture is my kitchen, and in the corner, I'm not even lying, mushrooms were growing.
Oh, nice.
In the kitchen. And I was like, hey, Dad, because my dad lives with us, there's mushrooms going. Oh, it's the dog water. The dog water's slapping out.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, but there are mushrooms growing. And so one day I got so fed up because I was like, there's something wrong. There is something wrong. So I cut a hole into my dining room wall. And this is what I found: mold.
Mm-hmm.
And the pipe, because it's CPVC,
Mm-hmm.
the seal wasn't the greatest, and the water was oozing out of the seal. And so we had to fix it, which then the mushrooms magically stopped growing.
Were they magic mushrooms?
I don't know.
No. Okay.
That's a whole other workshop. But pay attention to the little things around the house, a soggy corner.
The musty smell that you just can't identify. And, you've interrogated the dog or the cat and they're not confessing to anything. So, yeah. So leaks, just, material failure or fixture failures and so forth can cause leaks and whatnot.
Okay, we're done with the slide. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my story. You have a
Cobweb?
bug.
Sorry. Welcome back. And we talked about freezing before, and I want to come back to it, not as, it happening accidentally, but again, winter being a reality here, when you have your external silcocks, your spigots on the outside of your house, and you have to get ready for winter, old school, was in your basement, you had a valve like this, okay, hanging out upside down,
Still do.
okay,
Yeah.
about a foot or so, maybe 2 feet from the exterior wall to this pipe that goes out the side of the house. And usually on the outside of the house, you have some item that looks something like this. So every winter, before it starts to freeze, you're supposed to shut this one off, open this one up, and thereby create a nice little air gap between this valve inside the house and this pipe or this spigot on the outside of the house. Okay, that's fine. It's great. New school is what we call the frost-free valve.
And I have the old school, and this is a reminder that it's getting cold outside and you should turn off your valves.
If you have this, you replace that. So, and these come in different lengths. You can get them as, I think as short as 6 inches, and they come out to like 24 inches, depending on what you need. This replaces the outside spigot on the house, slide it in, connect it up to your plumbing. Now you no longer need this guy because this is built in to the end of that fixture. So every time you shut your spigot off on the outside, you're automatically creating that air gap to the outside
And
every
these
time.
these feel differently when you close them, right? They feel.
Yes, these are quarter turn. Again, we were talking before, old school valves, multi-turn, so forth. New school valves, quarter turn, done. All right. So
I'm jealous of those.
yeah, now this is a $30-something, valve. It's not cheap, but if you're having problems, let's say this thing's finally failed, or the outside spigot's finally failed and just won't shut off, then step up and one and done. Then you don't have to worry about draining your lines and so forth every winter. All right.
Now, that frost-free one, so like my line on the exterior goes like out and then around. So this part goes in your house.
Correct.
So you need to be able to install this.
That's right.
Into your house.
And there's going to be situations where you can't. And then that's why you'll stick with the old school method of doing it.
Okay.
But maybe you bring yourself up to a modern quarter turn ball valve. But yeah, exactly right. Good point. Good point.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think.
So we're going to pause before we go to
Wastewater. Yeah. Any questions on supply side?
No questions yet.
No questions yet. Didn't really talk about hot water so much. I talked about it going into the tank and leaving the tank and so forth. One thing I will mention about hot water is that when it gets installed, when a hot water tank gets installed in your house, you want to have somebody that knows what they're doing, not Uncle Frank.
Frank. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Frank probably doesn't know about dielectric connections, and dielectric means two metal, right? And a hot water heater is constructed out of one type of metal, and your plumbing is probably something else, copper, something else, not what it's made out of. So you have to have special fittings between that tank and the rest of your plumbing. And what this does is prevent corrosion inside the hot water heater. Well, it doesn't prevent it. It really slows it down. So, and again, this is probably a $10 times 2 for your hot water heater. But if you don't have these installed, your hot water heater has had its life shortened considerably. All right. These are called dielectric unions.
And so if we could just talk about the hot water tank for just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So hot water tanks used to last like 20 years.
They still can.
Okay.
They still can.
And never drain your hot water tank unless you are routinely draining your hot water tank. True or false?
I mean, if you don't get to draining it within the first couple of years, then you're probably not going to be able to drain it because the sediment will get into the bottom. Again, what comes out of our water lines isn't 100% water. If you fill up, if that too much of that sediment builds up in that hot water tank, opening that drain valve, you'll probably get nothing but a trickle. So it's kind of,
And should
end of the
we
line.
drain our hot water tanks?
I mean, it's probably a good idea. Nobody ever does it, including me. What I do though is replace the anode rod in the hot water tank, which nobody seems to know about. But it sounded like a loaded question, Allison. What's your opinion on draining tanks?
Well, no, I mean, my loaded question is nobody ever does it, so don't start doing it. Because if it's like 10 years old, you're going to kill your hot water tank if you can get it to drain.
If you can, but mostly you'll probably break the valve.
Right.
So, and there's no replacing that valve. Then you're done.
Right. So you're killing your hot water tank.
Yeah.
So I guess, I've always heard you should drain your hot water tank. Mine is 3 years old and I've never drained it.
I don't know about drain it. You should. Best practice would be to kind of flush it a little bit. Until the water starts to run clear, because that sediment will sit in the tank. And this is assuming you have old school, 40, 50 gallon, Daleks looking thing in your basement that stores water. Some of you might now have on demand, which is a whole nother animal that we won't get in here tonight. And that has its own set of maintenance items, so forth, that we just aren't going to dive into here tonight. So that's really what I want to talk about with the hot water heaters. One other note on hot water heaters is sometimes you will have two valves coming out of the hot water heater, one coming in from the supply side and one going out to be distributed through the rest of the house. The hot water heater has hot water in it. Do not shut both of those valves off at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, it needs water to go in it.
Needs water to go in it, or if you want to shut the water off to it, make sure you turn the hot water heater off. And even then, don't close that other valve. Hot water expands, kind of like steam. If you close both valves, you've now trapped that water in there, and it's going to continue to expand. And again, it's not going to build up as much pressure as ice, but you're begging for a failure. So one or the other, but not both at the same time. If you have two valves, most hot water installations just have a valve on the way into the tank, not on the way out, which is, I think, that's a fail-safe. That keeps people from making that mistake, basically. All right. Anything else on supply side?
I don't think so. I think we should move on now to wastewater.
Okay. So on the waste side of things, let's bring up number 2. Ian, please. So this is typical, right? Now, this PowerPoint program has a mind of its own, doesn't it? So you get you've used your water, you've taken a bath, you've used the loo, you've washed the dishes, so forth, and it goes down the drain, right? Now, you need to get it basically back out to the street to get to either your storm or your sanitary. So on the waste side of plumbing, you have 2 channels, okay? Sanitary and storm. Sanitary is basically anything that's going down a drain in your house, whether it's the toilet, bathtub, sink, if you've got drains in the floor of your basement, that's going to be tied into your sanitary. Slop sinks in the basement too, because they'll either have their own dedicated line or they'll have a pipe leading to a floor drain and so forth. So that's, going to go to the sanitary. The only thing that should be going to the storm system is basically your downspouts, right? And footer drains? Footer drains too will go to storm.
Yep.
Exactly. So nor should the twain meet. We don't.
And that doesn't mean that they don't.
No, but
it means that in the way that it's supposed to work, wastewater, personal wastewater goes into the sanitary sewer, and then nature water goes into the storm sewers.
So the storm water collected typically doesn't get treated. It finds its way into the waterways and so forth because it should be clean. right? Or clean-ish, not toxic.
Correct.
Maybe
We're
a
not
better
pouring oil down our driveway drains.
Exactly.
We shouldn't be putting any chemicals in the driveway drains.
Exactly. So on the sanitary side, that water is supposed to all end up at the treatment plant and should not make it out untreated into our waterways, lakes, and so forth. Old school collection systems like Lakewood, now Lakewood is undoing it, but it's expensive and it's slow. Old school collection systems all over the country, not just here, everywhere. Those systems were either combined intentionally, in other words, not separated, or they were separated in what we call shotgun. So the storm system tended to be lay on top of the sanitary system. The sanitary would run it right underneath it. And wherever there was a manhole, when you look down that manhole, there was actually a metal plate. And that metal plate was basically shaped in the bottom half of a pipe. So if they needed to get in and clean the sanitary, the guys would go down, lift that plate out, move it to the side, and that would give you access to the sanitary. Now, over time, that plate, being made out of metal, starts to corrode and rust and starts to either get perforated or becomes so light that when there's a storm, it gets washed out of place. Now you're really mixing, as if they weren't separated. And that's what Lakewood is slowly and probably fairly well on, almost towards completion of having those systems separated.
Yeah, we have a consent decree with the EPA, and Lakewood, under Mayor George and Mayor Summers, have made a big impact by disconnecting the sewers and rerouting things. We have a great team at our Public Works Department that's working really hard to prevent those sewer overflows into the lake.
Exactly. Now, before you remove or take that slide down, Ian, the problem with sanitary waste is that it produces methane gas and just generally stinks, right? We all know this. So we need a way of draining water out of our house or the waste out of our house. But when we're not flowing water out, what's preventing those gases from coming back up into the house? And sometimes it does because something has gone wrong, right? So let's flip back to that slide, Ian, just quickly. And you will notice, oh, my glasses.
What are you looking for?
There you go. Item number, was that 11?
No.
H.
H is a curb trap.
Yeah. So that's a trap, okay? And this is the general method of creating a one-way valve for the wastewater so that wastewater comes out of the house, but gases can't come back in. And I think we even have a better slide of a trap.
Yeah, so if we go to, sorry, where is it? It is a number.
Saw it. I know I did.
Why am I blank? Oh, 20.
20.
And then we also at 21 have a drum trap too.
Oh, yeah. So that's a great example of a trap. Okay. So as water's coming down into that trap from the sink, the tub, whatever, it's pushing that slug of water up and over so that it can then flow out to the right of that slide, right? And then hit the main waste and make its way down.
I was reading when I was finding this picture, because the old picture that we had was pixelated, that P traps are the most common version of trapping now, and S traps are on their way out. They're illegal, I believe, in new builds.
Exactly, and I forget the reason why, and I meant to look that up before tonight, and I forgot to do so. But you may find S traps
in our homes.
In our homes, and you can still get the service parts for them. But P trap is the way they want things done. I can tell you, trying to clean snake, so forth, an S trap can be a bit of a challenge, but I don't think that's really the reason. So anyways, but regardless, whether it's an S style or a P style, the result is the same, is it allows water to leave, but does not allow gases to come back in. All right. Now, if you were also really take a close look at your waste plumbing in your home, which, by the way, kind of like the supply side where the thing is coming through the floor, your main line leaving your house has probably got a clean out, a hole in the floor, a cap, a fitting in the floor that's probably somewhere between 4 and 6 inches in diameter that threads into the floor. And this is where the plumber or the drain cleaner can come in and access that main line going between the house and the street to clean the line should it become blocked. But we'll come back to that in a little bit here. So the P-trap or the trap is, again, the main check valve. But water pipes are just basically an elaborate straw. And you can come back to me, Ian. Pipes, the waste system in your house and so forth, is basically just an elaborate straw. And we all know if you want to take a sip out of your drink, you put that straw in your mouth and you pull it up and so forth. And as kids, we all put our thumb over the top of that straw and all of a sudden we have a column of water. Well, the same thing would happen in our house if we didn't have a way of letting air in the top. So part of the waste system is also a vent system that goes all the way out through the roof of your house, right? And if you look outside and look at your roof, you'll probably find at least one. Some homes have two, basically 6-inch little pipe that's sticking out of the roof, okay?
And they're generally black.
Generally black, yeah, because they're cast iron originally.
Mm-hmm. They're thin.
Yep, cast iron. And that is your vent. And that is always tied in to your waste plumbing and so forth. On a really windy day when the wind is just honking and you know, especially gusting, if you look in your toilet, open up the lid, you'll see that you've got motion in there. All right. Now you won't be able to surf on it. I mean, it's not waves and so forth, but you'll see that water moving. And what you're seeing is the effect, the pressure difference between the wind up here and the pressure of the system underground trying to compensate and stay aligned. Okay. It doesn't indicate a problem. In fact, if you don't see that ever on a windy day, or your toilets are flushing badly, and this is usually the first sign, you flush the toilet and you're like, I got to flush twice, 3 times to, you know, make it all go away, then it's probably in your venting system. It's not allowing that air to follow that slug of water out of the house so that it doesn't sit there and siphon like a straw. All right.
I never think of that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. So, and the primary cause of vents getting plugged up are critters, raccoons, squirrels build a nest in there for some silly reason. And there you have it. So somebody gets to get up on the roof and, you know, ask them to leave.
Yeah. Who gets to be that person?
Not me. Not me.
Not me either. 1, 2, 3, not it.
Exactly. So, all right. Now, materials for waste systems. Traditionally, it was just like the plumbing. It was basically some sort of iron pipe or cast iron pipe. And in the basement, it's usually pretty easy to find. It's 1 or 2, 4 to 6 inch diameter pipes that seems to be coming out of the floor and disappearing up into the house. Behind the walls, there's a whole network of pipes that are bringing the wastewater into it from the bathroom, the, what have you, kitchen, whatnot, and then all making its way to that one giant pipe coming under the floor and heading out of the house. Part of your homework project, again, you map the supply side coming in with the valves and so forth, find that, clean up. And if you've got to move the workbench that you parked on top of it and didn't think that was a problem, might be time to relocate that workbench, because if you ever get a clogged main drain, then that's where they're going to have to open up and get in and so forth and snake it out.
If you don't have a clean out, you probably really want to put that on your to-do list with the plumber, because again, we have tree roots, we have backups, things happen. If your storm sewer backs up, when it's not storming, that means that there's a problem and they need to get to it. So again, we're planning here.
Right.
And by having a clean out, we're planning to be able to tackle the issue.
Exactly. And before I break into materials, let me just talk a quick bit about troubleshooting your waste system. I just talked about the air slug and toilets flushing badly. the other thing that helps you decide whether you have a mainline issue or whether you have a local internal issue is, are all the fixtures affected or just certain fixtures affected? Or how long does it take for the water to back up in the sink on this side of the house versus the water to back up the sink on the other side of the house? So again, just a network of pipes, you could have a local issue or you could have a mainline issue. A lot of people have been ripped off by drain cleaners. They had a local issue that could have been taken care of with a little snake, but because they didn't know how to ferret out what it is, a drain cleaner would come in and say, oh, you need a new main line, or your main line needs to be, jetted or snaked and so forth. He goes upstairs, quickly snakes the 1.5-inch line up in the bathroom to test, does the quick clean out in the bottom, and then charges you $1,000. All right. So I'm becoming knowledgeable on how to figure out where a clog is can save you from, dishonest contractors.
And you can always call us at Lakewood Alive. We'll talk you through those things. We'll try to troubleshoot with you. We can come out. Of course, we can't fix the problem, but we can talk you through things so that you can be better informed when dealing with the contractor.
Exactly. So mainline clogging can either, it can be sourced inside the house. In other words, kids flushing toys, things like that makes its way down to the main line, clogs that up, and then you need to come in and clean the main line. Whatever these, or if you've got roots and so forth, if you've got a big tree or a bunch of shrubbery outside, and so forth, old waste plumbing is put together in sections, and every one of those sections has a joint, and every one of those joints is a place for material to catch and or roots to get in, and that's where roots like to come in. Roots love that water. It's full of nutrients. Trees don't have noses, so they don't care what it smells like. But there you go. So if you have an ongoing root issue, you're probably having a contractor come out and clean that main line every, some odd years. There's two basic ways to clean plumbing. Old school is with what we call a snake, which is basically just a really, really, really long spring, right? About, an inch in diameter. And you put various cutters on it and you put that in the entrance to the drain or the clean out, and then you spin it either by hand or with an electric motor. You can rent these things, so forth.
Lakewood toolbox.
Okay. And it goes in the line and it just basically punches a hole through whatever is in the way. Okay. But that's all it does. It doesn't really clean the pipe. New school, more expensive up front, but lasts a lot longer, is what we call jetting, which is where we take high pressure water and go inside that pipe and clean the inside of that pipe, or cut the roots. This water can actually cut the roots all the way back to the inside diameter of the pipe, which means that then the roots have to have that much more time to come back and cause a problem. So snaking a line is probably a 1, maybe 2-year solution. Jetting a line is typically 5+ year solution. All right. Now, for them to come out and snake, you're probably looking at about a $200 show up fee. For them to come out and jet, that number is probably closer to $500. But you're getting a much better cleaning job out of the jet than you are the snake.
Now, if you still have your original terracotta line, so I think we should take a moment and talk about that. So trees generally will come to your terracotta pipe because terracotta is basically a pipe stacked inside a pipe, stacked inside a pipe.
The
correct?
joints that I was talking about. Yep,
Yeah.
they're put together as joints. Yeah.
So
Pretend this is terracotta.
and so the tree roots would come in right here because they can feel the water and they go into the pipe. Where if you had a PVC line,
Right.
there's no way the tree roots, well, I don't think that they can bust through.
No, because the connection for PVC is much better. And so the tree doesn't source or smell the water, so to speak, and try to run its tendrils into that joint.
So I guess my point of setting that up was if you have a terracotta pipe that's 100+ years old, is it recommended or are you able to use a jetter?
Jetter would be recommended. The problem with the mechanical snake is that it's mechanical and it's really violent. I mean, when you get that thing in there and it's spinning around, it is just flapping around. And if you've got an old terracotta pipe in there that's weak, so forth, you're actually liable to create more damage than solve a problem. Now, that doesn't mean that a poorly trained jet operator can't, destroy a pipe, and it can happen. But in general, the jetting is a little gentler on the system than the mechanical snake. And they can even now bring that jet into the house, into your kitchen, into your bathroom, and so forth, in what we call little mini kits that make it convenient and safe to use the high pressure water inside your house.
Okay, that's great to know. I would have thought the opposite. So thanks for dispelling that myth.
And if and again, we know plumbers are expensive, and there's a pretty good motivation to go in and try to clean that thing yourself. Snaking a line is, whether it's jetting or old school snake, is an art form, because you were working blind. And every time you go around a corner in that pipe, right, and there's probably a trap in there too, and you get through a trap, you then run the risk of not being able to get that thing back. So you've got to be extremely careful.
You're also dealing with poop. So
true.
My dad and I, Roger and I, we ride or die. We do everything together in terms of home repairs. I had a backed up drain line, and he just manhandled all the stuff that came out of there like it was nothing. And I was in the corner going like this, holding the bag. So it is probably poop. So if you are not inclined to touch that, you may not want to do it yourself. I just want to be honest of what you're dealing with in those pipes.
And again, you can wear gloves and so forth, and that's great as long as everything's going swimmingly. But when things go wrong, typically the snake starts to get bound up down there, and you don't catch it in time, and you're pulling it back, and it comes out, and it just goes, wah! Well, all the gloves in the world isn't going to save you from that.
And if people are flushing things that they're not supposed to, wipes, please never flush a wipe. I don't care what they say. They're terrible.
Yeah.
Do not flush anything that should not be flushed.
Feminine product.
Lady products, I'll say it. In my house, it is not. I mean, I'm the only one who's lady, but in my house. But yeah, don't believe anything that they say. Toilet paper is about as extreme as you want to get. Yeah. And the bidets are on the rise.
Yeah. Yeah.
On social media, I keep getting advertisements for something called Tushy. It's a bidet that they're trying to sell me. I'm not there yet, but a lot of people I know are. And
most of the rest of the world is.
Right. They think we're backwards. So that is great because that's less stuff that you're flushing.
Exactly.
And more environmentally friendly, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But just be careful with what you're flushing, and please don't ever flush a wipe or a lady product.
Yeah. Now, clogged pipes is a reality. I mean, hair, soap scum, so forth start to build up over time and so whatnot. And there's all manner and kind of drain cleaners. Now, most of those cleaners are pretty caustic. In order for them to do their job, they have to be. But be judicious with them. Don't sit there and just keep pouring gallon after gallon of drain cleaner down there and then stop because it's not working and call either Uncle Frank.
Yes.
Yeah, Uncle Frank and or a plumber. Now, the plumber, if he's been around long enough, the first thing he's going to ask you is just how much Drano have you put down there before you called me? But Uncle Frank is probably not likely to ask that question. They might take a snake in there and start working, and all of a sudden this thing comes back at him and it's full of drain cleaner and he gets burned. So just be careful with those products. Sometimes you use them for maintenance. Sometimes you have to use them to just really unclog a solid pipe. But
we really push vinegar and baking soda. I'm sure people have said other things, but I don't believe in those chemicals because our pipes are so old. But what I do believe in is a Zip It. That plastic thing that you shove down your drain that has little teeth on it. Don't do it unless you've already eaten. If you're about to have dinner, don't, because some of the things that come out of there, the soap clogs. I mean, soap the way that the fats and the soaps
Mhm.
they clog into your drain. It just happens.
Yep.
And the globs that come out, impressive.
Yeah.
I'm the only one in my house that zippets, and I'm
Okay.
a religious zippeter. I have a lot of hair, and so everyone blames me for clogging at home. I have the tub shroom. This is like an infomercial. The tub shroom is amazing.
Okay.
It is it looks like a little mushroom, and it has a rubber gasket on the bottom that you shove into your drain, and then the hair circles around it, and so it gets trapped between the rubber gasket and the top.
Okay.
And apparently I'm the only one who also cleans the tub shroom. But so that collects the hair. I guess it's my hair. And then I zip it probably about once a month, and I get all of the soap globs. Sorry that this took a turn. But and I do it on and I have a sink shroom and a tub shroom.
You know about the shrooms, even the ones you grow on purpose or not. Yeah.
And so those types of products work. I give all of my friends zippets for Christmas and housewarming gifts.
Okay.
Because if you can get into your drain, not all drains are just,
Right.
But
Yeah.
if you can, life-changing. I have not had to use a drain cleaner
Good.
in years because of my shrooms and my zippets.
Okay.
So
Cool.
please use
Yeah.
those types of things instead of Drano. I mean, there's obviously times when you have to, I guess, but just be real cautious.
Tub drains are just notorious, just because they see a lot of detritus. The other thing you can do is actually your toilet plunger makes a good drain cleaner. And sometimes by just working that, you fill the tub up, or it's filling up because it's not draining properly. So you've got standing water in the tub or slowly draining water. You sit there and use that plunger and just work that back and forth. Sometimes that just moves the clog enough that it can then pass and save you from having to use the Dranos, things like that to unclog it. So that works as well.
And Kathy, we're like spirit animals. I'm glad that you also agree about the tub shroom. I saw that. So thank you. So,
I think she's a plant, isn't she?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Who
Kathy
are you
and
really?
we go way back. So yeah, I think so. Just try to be proactive in your active cleaning. If you do use a lot of like oil-based things, like scrubs, or your shampoos that are like coconut oil, or all those fancy things, you're just going to be aware that you're sending that into your drain and it's going to congeal. And that's going to cause a problem potentially. Yep. So the baking soda and the vinegar will break up fats. So I use that in my kitchen sink too. Okay. And so it's a regular routine thing that you can do to kind of be a little bit proactive on the clogging.
On the kitchen side, also, when you're done cooking and you've got, again, oils, and so when you're rinsing out your pans and whatnot, just run some hot water for a minute or two. And that just gets that, one, it gets the oils keeps the oils from congealing in the trap, which every time there's a bend, that's a place for it to get stuck, so forth. And just, gets it out to a larger line where it isn't going to be a problem. Those guys that shave, when you're shaving, you're rinsing your face afterwards. We all want to shut the water off. No, let that run. Let it clear the trap, so forth, so that it doesn't sit in there and become a problem.
Yes, right. The person who cleaned your bathroom would thank you for doing that.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, we get to the materials.
I think we're getting close to the end here,
okay.
So we're going to wrap up here. But we want to talk a little bit about what your pipes are made of.
On the waste side, traditionally you're cast iron.
Right.
Now, in the case of a toilet, old school toilet installations, there's actually what they call a lead bend, which goes from the floor, but the thing, then the toilet sits on top of it, right? So if this was your toilet flange in the floor, that lead bend, that lead elbow would go from here and make its way no more than 3 feet, because that's the way they're designed, to the main stack, and then away it goes. Now, you don't need a trap with a toilet.
There, slide number 10 is the lead bend.
Look at that. I didn't even notice that one.
Slide number 10. This is from a volunteer project we did a few years ago.
Okay. So
we are looking at Yeah, we have to share a different screen.
Okay.
And thank you, Ian, for all of your technological.
Oh, yes, we're going to get there.
No, you're
PowerPoint
doing
is
great. I mean,
PowerPoint's giving me some fits tonight. Sorry about that, team.
That's all right.
you're
That's
good.
all right.
And I'm being genuine when I say that. So slide number 10, please.
So a toilet does not need a trap like a sink, like a tub, so forth, because the trap is actually built into it. Which is
So
basically, yeah.
You're seeing the lead bend right here. So that's a toilet is sitting above that. That has this part in the floor.
Yep.
And then that bend is where the waste goes down into your soil stack.
Exactly. And then that soil stack is typically cast iron. Now, cast iron has the unusual property of getting tense with age. It doesn't relax with age like all other metals. Doesn't matter why, it just is. So what can sometimes happen is when you start to mess with that old plumbing, that cast iron will start to fracture. And I had a couple of jobs where I started out with like a toilet replacement and had to get rid of that lead bend and go to something more modern. And all of a sudden I'm chasing that stack all the way to the roof of the house. Now, you know, and the customer, of course, squints at you like, what is this guy trying to pull? I'm just saying it can happen. So, you know, and the older the cast iron and the worse shape it's in, the more likely that it could just literally blow up. And that's a pretty expensive replacement. Replacing it, everybody's going to go over, and you can come back to me now, Ian. Everybody's going to replace it with PVC. There just isn't really any reason to do anything else. You get into some of the older, wealthier homes up in the Heights, the Rockefeller homes in East Cleveland, for instance, they used copper.
Stop it.
Oh yeah.
I never saw one of those.
Yep. Used copper for the waste, and they used brass fitted pipe for the supply side. Lasts forever until you got to mess with it, and oh my gosh, it's a nightmare. But I, you know, made good money at the scrapyard when I took that 6-inch copper waste out. But anyways, so PVC, and you can see it comes in so many different varieties. I don't know what mistake I made with this. This is all glued together. Something went wrong on a job, but I was trying to construct this. So they can go anywhere with it, and they can start in your floor and take this straight up through the roof of your house if you need to.
But they can also combine the two.
And they can also combine the two.
They did that at my house because Uncle Frank tried to fix my soil stack before I purchased it, and then I made them fix it with a real plumber, and they put the PVC in.
Exactly. So that's really it on the waste. Oh, let's go back to traps for just a second. You don't need to pull up that. So I've got one here. El Cheapo plastic, right? I'll bet you this was, I don't know, a whole $5 at a plumbing store or one of the big boxes and so forth. It's okay. It won't rot, won't rust, anything like that, but it's not very strong. Now, right next to it is this, which is a metal one. It's going to be more expensive, but pick it up and feel it. If it's the same weight, if it feels it's the same weight as the plastic, don't buy this, all right? Buy the plastic. If you want real plumbing, and this is basically chrome-plated brass, you're going to have to go to a plumbing supply store.
And we're big fans of Many Heart.
Yes.
Lorraine and
93rd. No, Lorraine and 65th.
Yeah, Many Heart is an amazing. If you need a hot water tank, toilet, go there or support locals. So Lakewood Hardware, Cleveland Lumber. Many Heart though is the bee's knees for plumbing supply.
And their primary business is contractors, but unlike a lot of places where they're primary contractor, they're actually happy to deal with the person, the DIYer and so forth.
And you can take your faucet or a piece of your faucet. Like if you have the original faucet, you could still fix it. You can take the part to Many Heart and they'll help you find the replacement. Or if you call them up and tell them what you have, they have all amazing parts to fix all of our original faucets.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah, you wander into one of the big boxes, and you've got something that's more than 15 years old. Chances of you finding that supply part on the shelf is pretty slim. And so Mineyard is about the last one around. There's another one, Lakeside Supply, up on 117th. They are not DIY friendly. In fact, they're not even contractor friendly, for that matter.
This is not our opinion.
Yeah. Well, that's my
John's opinion.
Sorry, are they a sponsor?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, they're not a
Right.
sponsor.
Yeah,
but
they're
you
not in
never know
Lakewood.
who's
They're not in
watching.
Lakewood. Yeah. So anyways, in my humble opinion. So yeah.
Okay, so we're getting ready to wrap up.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, please submit them. Ian, do we have any questions?
No questions to report.
Great. So that means we did a great job.
Or they're bored.
No. Cassie's been enjoying
Yeah,
and
but she's
commenting.
a shill. We know that.
No, she has good questions.
Okay.
And opinions.
She does.
She has good taste.
This is where I stop talking.
Okay, so I think we've covered it. We
Yeah.
covered the intake of clean water, the output of dirty water. Again, dealing with a contractor, Lakewood Alive can kind of help you, give you talking points, help you find contractors. We also have the toolbox. So if you are looking to do something yourself, contact us. We'll walk you through it. Matt's really great at working with residents, former contractor himself. So, please take advantage of our resources. We are free. We are community supported. We're here to help you. You are the reason why we're here. So use us. So unfortunately, tonight's the last one for 2021.
All right. I get to
We're
close out the
ending our
season.
7th season, believe it or not. You've been with us every step of the way.
Yeah.
And so we're looking
Be back.
forward to 2022. And again, we're hell or high water. We're going to be in person
Hopefully
somehow.
not high water.
Well,
We should know better by now.
sure. But so thank you all for spending time with us. Thank you, Kathy, for the compliments and everyone who's joined us tonight. We are so thankful. Thanks to Ian for his technological support. And thanks to John and all of our presenters this season. You make us smarter. So
All right,
thank
then.
you.
That's the idea.
And again, we look forward to seeing you soon. All of these have been recorded, so you can find them on our website. The insulation one and the plumbing will be posted there shortly. And you'll be able to watch us on demand as many times as you want, because this is so fun.
Exactly.
So fun. So again, thanks so much. And we'll
Need
see you in
samples.
2022. Take care.
Good night.